Breaking news out of Syria tonight. The Assad regime overthrown in a lightning blitz by rebel forces. After 5 decades of iron rule, what's next for the region? Plus, new photos of the suspect wanted for allegedly gunning down a top insurance executive on the streets of New York City. First, jubilation in Syria. As rebel forces seize the presidential palace, Bashar al-Assad reportedly fleeing the country. After nearly 14 years of bloody civil war, his government overrun in less than 2 weeks. A massive defeat for Assad's backers, Russia and Iran. President Biden today calling it a fundamental act of justice. The world now bracing for what's to come. The rebels who toppled Assad previously linked to al-Qaeda. President-elect Trump saying he wants the U.S. to stay out, arguing it's not our fight. And what this could mean for the roughly 900 American troops inside Syria, some carrying out airstrikes on ISIS positions today. James Longman from the Middle East and Martha Raddatz on the road ahead. Also tonight, a new look at the suspect wanted in the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The search expanding far beyond New York City. Divers scouring a lake in Central Park looking for the murder weapon. And what police found inside a backpack possibly linked to the shooter. President-elect Trump says he intends to pardon many of the January 6 defendants on day one. And he wants to investigate members of the Congressional Committee that held hearings on the riots, calling out 2 members by name. Chaos at a holiday parade. A police motorcycle veers into a crowd with multiple injuries. The rebirth of Notre Dame. The first mass is celebrated 5 years after that devastating fire. The firefighters who saved the cathedral are honored. It's about to get warmer in much of the country, but we've got late word on a new flooding threat. Dramatic video of a Coast Guard rescue. 2 people hoisted to safety after their plane went down in a marshy field. The brackets are set for the expanded college football playoffs. The big surprise on who made it and which powerhouse was left out. And after nearly 2 years of shows spread over 5 continents, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour breaking records tonight, taking its final bow.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday. I'm Whit Johnson. As we come on the air tonight, the world is watching the events unfolding in Syria and anxiously anticipating what comes next. In the last 24 hours, rebel forces taking control of the capital, Damascus, ousting longtime President Bashar al-Assad from power. Across the country, people seen celebrating in the streets. The Assad family had ruled Syria with an iron fist for 5 decades. Earlier today, President Biden calling the fall of Assad a fundamental act of justice, but saying this is also a moment of risk and uncertainty. The rebels who toppled Assad had previous links to al-Qaeda, and the U.S. is clearly concerned about ISIS taking advantage of the chaos. Hundreds of American troops are still serving in Syria, even carrying out dozens of airstrikes today. As for Assad, Russian state media reports he's now in Moscow, given asylum. Russia, a longtime backer of his regime. And tonight there is news on an American journalist kidnapped in Syria more than a decade ago. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz is standing by. But first, ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman leads us off from Beirut.
Tonight, history unfolding at lightning speed in the Middle East. Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad overthrown by rebel fighters. His presidential palace overrun. His people oppressed by decades of dictatorship, discovering his enormous wealth. The rebels declaring victory from the state TV studios, saying the city of Damascus has been liberated. The tyrant Bashar al-Assad has been toppled. Across the country, symbols of the Assad family regime defaced or destroyed. Jubilation and relief in the streets, celebrating a moment few could see coming less than 2 weeks ago. This man saying, it's been 13 years that we've been waiting for this day, and today is our day. The Islamist leader of the main rebel group, Abu Muhammad al-Golani, who cut ties with al-Qaeda years ago, is now projecting a more moderate image, speaking triumphantly at the historic Umayyad Mosque in the capital city, Damascus. Saying, this victory, my brothers, is a new chapter in the history of the entire Islamic nation. It is a turning point for the region. Russia's foreign ministry now says Assad has stepped down as president of Syria and ordered a peaceful transfer of power. Russian state media reports he and his family are now in Moscow. Assad, who was in power for more than 24 years, oversaw the brutal crushing of the revolution against his regime through more than 13 years of civil war. The UN says more than 7 million Syrians are displaced within the country, with over 6 million more seeking refuge abroad. Russia, Iran and Hezbollah had helped him cling to power. But with those allies distracted in wars in Ukraine, Gaza and Lebanon, the rebels seized the opportunity. President Biden speaking this afternoon.
At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians.
900 US troops are currently in the country as part of the fight against ISIS. Biden indicating that will continue.
We're clear-eyed about the fact that ISIS will try to take advantage of any vacuum to reestablish its capabilities and to create a safe haven. We will not let that happen.
Going on to say that the US had conducted airstrikes against ISIS just today. In a Truth Social post Saturday, before Assad was toppled, President-elect Trump writing, "This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved." Tonight is a night of real joy for millions of Syrians. It's also a time to remember the many, many loved ones who were killed by the Assad regime and their allies. It's also a time of real danger where hope may turn to violence. Whit?
James Longman for us, thank you. And for more on these fast-moving developments in Syria, let's bring in our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz. Martha, what more are you learning about this rebel group that seized power, and what could this mean for the 900 U.S. troops still in Syria?
Well, with those 900 U.S. troops are in Syria specifically to keep after ISIS. And today's U.S. bombing of 75 ISIS targets is a reminder ISIS is still active. So the Pentagon says the U.S. forces will remain in Syria for now, and they feel they are safe. As for the rebel group now in charge in Syria, the U.S. listed the leader as a specially designated global terrorist. And even though he says he's now cut ties with al-Qaeda, this is not going to be a shining democracy. Whit?
Yeah, approach with caution appears to be the rule here. And President Biden was also asked today about missing American journalist Austin Tice, who disappeared back in 2012 near the Syrian capital. What's the latest on that?
Well, Tice was believed to be in the hands of the Assad regime. President Biden said today that believe he is alive and he is committed to returning Tice to his family, but at the same time acknowledging this is a moment of considerable risk and uncertainty. Whit?
And so much at stake. All right, Martha, thank you. Turning now to the nationwide manhunt for the suspected killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The NYPD releasing new images of the suspect, appearing to show him on the day of the shooting. Officers continuing to scour Central Park for clues days after they recovered what they think is his backpack. But they believe he is long gone from the city. Here's ABC's senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, with the search for a killer on its fifth day, the NYPD believes the suspect is seen in these newly released images, entering a taxi on its way out of the city. Authorities still have not found or named him, but they believe the suspect escaped by bus about 45 minutes after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down.
I don't want to do anything that's going to tip him off that we're on his trail, but we feel really good where we are.
Police today searching this pond in Central Park for a second day. Divers scouring the water for evidence, including the distinctive murder weapon and the bicycle the suspect was seen pedaling away from the crime scene. The pond is close to the spot where police found what they believe is the suspect's backpack. Sources tell ABC News it contained a jacket and Monopoly money. Detectives are trying to determine if the play money was meant as some sort of statement.
There's almost a game-like quality to this behavior.
Investigators are working to determine where the suspect boarded a bus to New York on November 24th. The bus originated in Atlanta, and the NYPD is checking every stop in between. Police building this forensic timeline. The suspect arrived in New York 10 days before the shooting, just after 10 p.m., and immediately took a cab to the Hilton. Half an hour later, he took another cab to this hostel on the Upper West Side, where authorities say his face was captured on security cameras. 10 days later, on December 4th, the suspect left the hostel at 5:30 in the morning, arriving near the Hilton 11 minutes later. He stopped into a Starbucks where he bought a granola bar and a water bottle, then went back to the Hilton to wait. At 6:44 a.m., Brian Thompson is approached from behind, a gunman shooting and killing the healthcare executive, then fleeing on foot through an alleyway. 4 minutes later, seen entering Central Park on an e-bike and exiting the park 8 minutes later, as seen in this video. Police say he ditched the bike by 7 a.m. and at 7:04, hailed a taxi to take him to the bus stop by the George Washington Bridge and vanished. Right now, Whit, it appears the NYPD dive teams that had been working here all day found no new evidence, and police are asking for public patience, even with a killer on the loose. As one chief put it, this is no TV crime drama meant to be solved in under an hour. Whit?
An incredible amount of resources devoted to this case as well. Aaron, thank you. Tonight, President-elect Donald Trump offering a clearer picture of his plans for his second administration and what he expects to do on day one in the Oval Office, saying he will pardon January 6 rioters and hold the January 6 committee to account. Here's ABC News White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks.
Tonight, President-elect Donald Trump promising his administration will move quickly on day one with a series of executive actions and pardons for January 6 rioters.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking for
issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
4 years ago, Trump supporters violently stormed the U.S. Capitol to protest the results of the 2020 election. About 140 officers were assaulted, according to the Justice Department. Since then, more than 950 defendants have been convicted, nearly 2/3 receiving prison time. Trump also saying he will not explicitly direct his Justice Department nor his nominee for FBI Director Kash Patel to investigate his political enemies, but then said members of Congress who served on the January 6th committee should be in jail.
And Cheney was behind it, and so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did, honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think?
I think everybody anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all.
ABC News learning that President Biden, in light of threats like these, considering preemptive pardons for people like former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. And major headlines on immigration, Trump again saying he wants to deport all undocumented immigrants, not just criminals, even if it means deporting entire families.
I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together and you have to send them all back.
Now, Trump also said that he wants to try to end the idea of birthright citizenship. That's the guarantee that people born on U.S. soil are then automatically U.S. citizens. It's not clear if he can just do that through executive action or what it would look like if he tries. That is a right that is understood to be enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
Mary Alice Parks, thank you. A historic weekend in Paris, the city's iconic Notre Dame Cathedral reopening and packed this morning for the first mass in more than 5 years since that devastating fire. President-elect Trump joining other world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, and meeting privately with Ukrainian President Zelensky. ABC's foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge from Paris tonight.
The newly refurbished Notre Dame tonight in its full glory. The Bishop of Paris knocking on the vast wooden doors, the bells resonating, the choir back in full voice, and those doors officially reopened to this truly magical music. Notre Dame's 8,000 pipe organ restored and roaring once again. French President Macron inviting First Lady Jill Biden, Prince William, President-elect Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky to Saturday's opening ceremony. Macron also organising a meeting with Trump and Zelensky at the Élysée Palace. Back at Notre Dame, the cathedral's first mass today in more than 5 years, since that devastating fire in 2019. The firefighters who bravely saved the cathedral on that day were honoured Saturday with this standing ovation, and the cathedral lit up with a message of thanks.
There'll be ceremonies here at the cathedral on each of the next 7 days. It's free to visit, but online reservations are already booked out for the next week, and we're expecting a long line of hopeful visitors tomorrow morning.
An inspiring sight in Paris. Tom Sufi-Burridge, thank you. Meantime, back here at home, the California Highway Patrol is investigating a crash. 10 people, including a motorcycle officer, were hurt when that officer apparently lost control and slammed into a crowd of spectators. Here's ABC's Jacqueline Lee.
Tonight, shocking video shows the moments a police motorcycle rams into a crowd in the middle of celebrating a Festival of Lights holiday parade. Hundreds lining the streets along the parade route in Palm Springs Saturday night. There's 2 police officers driving their motorcycles, with a third officer slamming into a sidewalk filled with people. 10 people, including that Palm Springs police officer, rushed to the hospital. First responders and bystanders jumping into action to help the wounded, including Idell, who put a tourniquet on an injured woman.
Trying to wrap her leg to stop the bleeding and to get help for you guys because nobody's here.
All 10 suffering non-life-threatening injuries.
I want to make sure that we take a very good, thorough look at this. With CHP is handling the investigation, but we'll also look at it internally.
When California Highway Patrol is leading the investigation and asking for any photos or videos from the public as they determine the cause of the incident. Whit.
An alarming scene. Jacqueline Lee, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Across the country, the first big freeze of the season is giving way to spring-like temperatures. Major cities in the Northeast will climb 10 to 15 degrees above normal. Let's bring in ABC News meteorologist Samara Theodore. So, Samara, some big changes on the way.
Well, Whit, that warm-up is actually going to stick around through the middle of the week for a few cities along the East Coast. Take, for example, New York City. Temperatures around 60 degrees on Wednesday. Atlanta, mid-60s on Tuesday before cooling down by the middle of the week. And we're also tracking rain. Rain making its way Monday, the start of the work week, from the south into the northeast. By 5 p.m. arriving in places like New York City, Hartford, snow even in parts of Vermont and New Hampshire. And then we have another wave of rain moving in Tuesday and Wednesday along the I-95 corridor. It's there that we're in a 65% drought in the Northeast, so this rain could do us some good. Whit?
Samara Theodore, thank you. To college football, and the new playoff picture is now set. Who's in and who's gotten the snub? ABC's Perry Russum joins us now. So, Perry, how's the national championship race shaping up?
Yeah, this is the first year of the new playoff format with 12 teams in the mix this year. Oregon officially today becoming the #1 seed after winning the Big Ten championship game last night. They are joined by Arizona State, Boise State, and Georgia, all getting first-round byes. But a major headline, perennial favorite Alabama did not make the playoffs. They were the last team out, their 3 losses catching up to them. They were nudged by SMU, who took the final spot in the playoffs after losing to Clemson in the final seconds of the ACC championship game last night. The playoffs start Friday, December 20th on ABC and ESPN. Whit.
Looking forward to it. Perry, thanks so much. Still much more ahead on World News Tonight. This Sunday, a dramatic rescue after a small plane crash. The Coast Guard swooping in to pull 2 people to safety. And Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is coming to an end. What it's meant to Swifties all over the world. Next tonight, a Coast Guard rescue in the marshes near the Georgia-South Carolina border. A small plane on a training flight went down Saturday near the Little Black River just after taking off from Savannah, Georgia. A Coast Guard helicopter crew hoisted the 2 people on board to safety. The cause is under investigation. When we come back, a record price for a pair of famous slippers. To the index now, a record auction price for a piece of entertainment memorabilia. A pair of ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz sold at auction Saturday for $28 million. This pair had been stolen in 2005 from a museum in Minnesota. The FBI recovered them in 2018 and returned them to the owner. No word on who made the winning bid. When we come back, after 2 years and 152 shows, the Eras Tour heads into history. Finally tonight, Swifties will have to shake it off and find some way to fill the blank space as the Eras Tour takes its final bow.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
It's the end of an era for Taylor Swift and her fans. 152 shows, 54 cities across 5 continents. The final stop on the Eras Tour tonight in Vancouver, Canada. Over its 2-year run, an estimated 11 million fans attended. The concert tour breaking records as the highest grossing in history with an expected $2 billion in sales. And those friendship bracelets, a major part of the fan experience.
So make the friendship race, let's take the moment.
Swift's message of inclusivity, life-changing for some young fans, like 12-year-old Ellie Serrano, who was on a mission to collect 1 bracelet from each show.
Taylor's really helped me.
Swift's many costume changes, inspiring fans to dress up too. 11-year-old Henry Hinson's Halloween costume going viral, catching the attention of Taylor's team.
They are giving us 2 tickets.
It was amazing to see Henry being celebrated for who he is.
And as this era's era comes to a close, another will surely begin.
An incredible run. What an impact. Thanks so much for watching tonight. I'm Whit Johnson. David Muir right back here tomorrow night. Have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.